So first of all, I'm Pamela Chu. I'm from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I coordinate the carbon capture and accounting program there. I'd like to first off thank the DAC Coalition and Jason for giving us this opportunity to share with you some of the work that we are focusing on. So a little bit first about standardization and innovation. This quote, measurements and standards are useful for pushing the frontier of innovation, was recently stated by Dr. Walter Kopan, the NIST director under the first Trump administration. I think it's important to, and I think all this audience recognizes, once it's possible to actually measure something, it then becomes possible to test it and make it better. That's all great, but I think some of the things that we forget about is that standardization actually facilitates trade with consensus specifications, enabling economies of scale and fit-for-purpose performance levels. And from my perspective, an important aspect is the comparability, compatibility, and interoperability. So why NIST? Why are we in this space? NIST does have a unique expertise in measurements and standardization, science and technology development across the board. We have a lot of cross-disciplinary subject matter experts. I want to emphasize that we're a non-regulatory agency under the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are the U.S. National Metrology Institute, and I'll say a little bit more about how that plays a role in this. And we are a neutral convener for industry, federal labs, universities, and the public. We do this through workshops and interlaboratory comparisons and through consortia, which I'll talk about a little bit in just a few minutes. So just a little bit more about NIST. For those of you who might not know about us, we do focus on promoting innovation and industrial competitiveness by advancing measurements and measurement science. We do this through sort of three different areas. First on the left, measurement technology development. Here we're really pushing the bounds of the measurement capabilities and trying to understand the uncertainties associated with it. You might be very familiar with all of our work in the atomic clock over the last decades to really push it to getting something better than 1 part in 10 to the 18th at this point. That plays an important role in our ability to use our GPSs and things like that these days. We also work very hard on improving the rigor and reproducibility of measurements throughout the ecosystem, and we do this by developing benchmark materials and providing data to the communities who are developing things so that we can understand how different things compare. Essentially, it's the ruler for different materials. Some people might not know that there's actually a standard for peanut butter that exists so that it helps people when you actually look at your label, what is in that peanut butter. We also have a big effort in documentary standards. This is probably less well known. Here we're supporting industry and government in the use of voluntary consensus standards. And I think this is an area that we're actually thinking that is essentially ripe for developing more at this point for the direct air capture areas. So a little bit more about how we develop measurement quality at NIST. We sit here in this pyramid of different measurements from industry and field laboratory measurements all the way up to the what we call the SI units here. We work to ensure measurement comparability across the globe by looking at the traceability of the measurements to the International System of Units, or the SI. We use a lot of different independent primary methods to ensure that measurements aren't biased by a given approach. And we do also a lot of comparisons with our partner national metrology institutes across the globe. We have a lot of unique products and services. Many of you probably know about our standard reference materials, our standard reference data projects, a whole series of measurement services, also databases and things like that we provide. In the area of carbon removal, I'm going to touch on a few of these, but don't have enough time to do a deep dive, but we are working across the space. I also want to mention that this is largely in connection with greenhouse gas measurements programs that we have, as well as a circular economy program. So briefly to touch on a couple of the areas that we're working on in the carbon dioxide removal space. For those of you working in the marine carbon dioxide area, you're familiar with the satellite measurements that are looking at the ocean color. Well, NIST has a long-standing effort with a marine optical buoy, MOBI, that serves as the primary reference measurement for the international ocean color sensors. We have been collaborating with folks since the 1990s on this to look at the radiometric standards and calibration, develop advanced radiometric sources to better match the blue-rich colors of the spectral distribution of the ocean, and develop also the next generation optical system designs. Of course, we focus a lot on developing a comprehensive uncertainty analysis, including looking at the biases and whatnot and correctional algorithms that help improve these measurement systems. I mean, I think the important point, rather than focusing on the technical details, is looking at from the big picture, this really results in a consistent time series suitable for long-term research, and it's traceable to the SI. Also, those of you that are involved in the marine carbon dioxide world know that one of the big challenges is that we've had a long-standing reference material program coming out of Scripps, which has been very important in moving a lot of the ocean acidification measurements forward and having a good understanding across the board about our measurements. But one of the big challenges is that there is anticipated a bottleneck with this program as the program and the scientists actually, they're senior scientists and anticipate retirements there. So what do we do? So NIST is actually actively working with Scripps and NOAA to actually look at direct measurements, the detailed requirements for the metrological traceability of these measurements and try to establish multiple sources of these reference materials and then expand the scope so that it becomes global. So we are actually working with many of the different organizations that are involved in this type of effort, and we're looking to develop a American hub as well as in the work with our European partners and Asia Pacific areas so that we have hubs of these capabilities to expand really the impact of these reference materials. I thought I'd take a few minutes to talk a little bit about what we're doing in the DAC solid sorbent characterization area. Here we're trying to develop the critical measurement science to accelerate the innovation, enable a timely and effective scalable direct air capture. So one of the things that we are doing is we do have a comprehensive sorbent material characterization capability, so we can help with the innovation of these metrologies to essentially elucidate the CO2 uptake and the dynamics of that and advance the models and the simulations. But in a lot of ways, more importantly, I think the NIST role here is really to help disseminate benchmark materials and standardization methods and provide the trusted data that's needed here. To just talk a little bit about kind of the technical work that we do, we have done a fair amount of work on developing a new dynamic column breakthrough measurement capability. So we look, at the details and how the materials, the gas flows through the system to try and minimize issues and uncertainties with dispersion and whatnot. And we go into great lengths to work on that. But now that we have this capability, we're now applying it to absorption measurements and helping to characterize the breakthrough measurements for different sorbent materials. We're also looking at absorption isotherms, other density, porosity, microstructure type of characteristics, as well as the heat capacity to help provide this information to the community. And ultimately, we plan to do that through a benchmark material, or otherwise known as an RGTM. We're calling that a research grade test material. To move along a little bit further on the whole carbon removal quantification challenge, as we all know here, there are many different pathways, there are additional attributes that you have to be concerned with, but and this is a huge challenge, it's very, very complex. What we are focusing right now on at NIST is looking at the afforestation, reforestation, issues, as well as direct air capture end of things. Through some initial stakeholder engagement that we have done recently, we had a workshop with Georgetown University in September of 2023. We've had numerous one-on-one discussions. We attended North American Carbon World last year, as well as SF Climate Week. And we were trying to understand different issues across the supply chain, the marketplace, and the demand side, as well as where the policies were focused. So one of the things that we came out with, we do have a report from the Georgetown workshop, some of the challenges and opportunities that we saw. Some of the challenges I'm sure you can relate to is the trust, the quality, issues with scaling the market, and the role of the voluntary carbon market versus a compliance type of approach. Some of the opportunities is to improve in the area of data transparency and accessibility, science and technology. There's still a lot to develop in the science and technology area. Standardization, of course, is something that resonates with us at NIST. Then things like market structure and policy, which is probably a little less of an area for NIST. So briefly, I did want to introduce new work that we're doing that we've recently launched is the Carbon Dioxide Removal Consortium. What we are trying to develop is a public-private partnership to address pre-competitive challenges. Just to note that NIST currently has over 24 different consortia in different areas, things like AI and quantum and cybersecurity. It can go on, biotechnology areas. For the Carbon Dioxide Removal Consortium, we started this out. We announced it in August of 2024 through an FRN. We have an initial focus on direct air capture and forests. We had our kickoff meeting in January. We currently have 43 member organizations. They're listed in teeny tiny font on the right. We are essentially looking at the suitability of current measurement approaches. We want to validate the repeatability and comparability of these approaches, identify areas for fit-for-purpose enhancement, and then foster standardization through consensus-based standard development organizations. So we've had some meetings. Our initial task groups were formed recently, looking at terminology. That was the #1 thing that folks were really interested in. I think the language that we all use, we have to have a common language so that we can all understand what we're doing. And then the current standards landscape and how we're approaching this is still a work in progress. Here's how to join. It's pretty simple. Send a letter of interest to us at co2removal@nist.gov. We will take a look at that, and then we formalize measurements through a cooperative research agreement, or CRADA. We are accepting members through an ongoing process, and I want to emphasize that there is no membership fee, too. So just in conclusion, I want to kind of emphasize that, here at NIST, what we're trying to really focus on is the measurement quality and standardization infrastructure to enable the measurement comparability, improve market scale and efficiency, provide and inform important data and quality data for CDR and CCUS decisions, and then ultimately provide equitable trade. So with that, I have a few minutes to answer any questions if there are. And I'm, of course, around for the rest of the meeting, so please come up and if you have any questions.